Most people think the right relationship is about finding someone who never leaves. It isn't. The strongest relationships aren't built because two people never face distance. They're built because, even after life tests them, both people continue choosing each other. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Not every man who enters your life is meant to stay. Some arrive to teach you a lesson. Some arrive because they're lonely. Some arrive because you happen to meet at the right time for them, not for you. But when a man is truly meant for you, something completely different begins to happen. His actions become consistent. His effort becomes natural. His commitment doesn't depend on your persuasion. You don't spend every day wondering where you stand. That's because genuine connection doesn't require constant convincing. Today, we're going to explore the 5 things that always happen when a man is genuinely meant for you. Not fantasy, not wishful thinking, but patterns rooted in human psychology and healthy relationship dynamics. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships is believing that excitement is the strongest sign of love. It isn't. Excitement is easy to create in the beginning because everything feels new. There is curiosity, attraction, and the thrill of discovering another person. Conversations are effortless, attention is frequent, and every interaction feels meaningful. But the early stage of a relationship is not where commitment is tested. Almost anyone can be charming when emotions are high and expectations are low. The real test begins after the novelty fades and everyday life starts demanding time, energy, and responsibility. A man who is genuinely meant for you doesn't build the relationship on temporary emotions. He builds it on reliable actions. He doesn't suddenly become distant because the honeymoon phase is over, nor does he only show interest when it's convenient. His effort remains steady because his intentions are steady. He understands that trust isn't built through occasional grand gestures, but through small, consistent behaviors repeated over time. Returning your calls, keeping his promises, making time for you even during busy weeks, and communicating honestly become habits rather than exceptions. These actions may not seem dramatic, but they create the emotional security that every healthy relationship depends on. Psychologically, consistency signals emotional maturity. Human beings naturally feel safer around people whose behavior is predictable. When someone's words and actions regularly match, your mind doesn't have to stay on high alert wondering what version of them you'll encounter tomorrow. Emotional stability reduces unnecessary anxiety and allows genuine intimacy to develop. This is why healthy relationships often feel calmer than people expect. They are not fueled by constant emotional highs and lows. Instead, they are strengthened by trust, reliability, and mutual respect. Many people become addicted to inconsistency without realizing it. They mistake emotional uncertainty for passion because unpredictability creates intense emotional reactions. One day they receive affection, the next day they experience silence. The brain starts chasing the next moment of attention, confusing relief with love. This cycle feels exciting, but it slowly creates insecurity instead of connection. A relationship that constantly leaves you guessing is emotionally exhausting because your energy shifts from building the relationship to simply trying to understand where you stand. A man who is meant for you removes unnecessary confusion through his actions. You don't spend days analyzing delayed messages or questioning whether his interest has disappeared overnight. His communication reflects genuine intention rather than emotional impulse. Even when work becomes stressful or life presents challenges, he doesn't disappear without explanation or expect you to carry the emotional weight of the relationship alone. He understands that consistency is not about being perfect every single day. It is about remaining dependable even when circumstances are less than ideal. This doesn't mean he never has difficult days or moments when he needs space. Emotional maturity allows room for both individuality and commitment. The difference is that he communicates instead of withdrawing without explanation. He respects your emotional security enough to be honest about what he's experiencing rather than leaving you to fill the silence with assumptions. That level of transparency strengthens trust because it shows that the relationship is important enough to protect through clear communication rather than avoidance. Consistency also reveals priorities. Everyone becomes busy, faces pressure, and deals with unexpected responsibilities. The question is never whether life becomes demanding. The question is whether someone continues making intentional effort despite those demands. People naturally invest their time where they see lasting value. When a man consistently chooses to nurture the relationship through both ordinary and difficult seasons, his behavior reflects a commitment that goes far beyond temporary attraction. One of the clearest signs that a man is genuinely meant for you is that he naturally begins making decisions with you in mind. This doesn't happen because you demand it or remind him of your importance. It happens because, in his mind, you are no longer separate from the future he is building. Your opinions, your feelings, and your well-being become part of the way he thinks. This shift is subtle, but it is one of the strongest indicators of emotional commitment. A man who sees long-term potential doesn't simply ask where you want to eat or what movie you want to watch. He starts considering how his choices today will affect the relationship tomorrow. Many people confuse attention with commitment. Attention can be exciting because it feels flattering, but it doesn't always reflect serious intentions. Someone can text you all day, compliment you constantly, and still make every major life decision without considering your place in it. Real commitment becomes visible when someone begins including you in conversations about the future. Whether it involves career opportunities, financial goals, family plans, travel, or personal growth, he doesn't make important choices as though he is living a completely independent life. Instead, he recognizes that meaningful relationships require shared direction, not just shared emotions. Psychologically, this reflects a shift from individual thinking to partnership thinking. Human beings naturally make sacrifices for people they deeply value, not because they feel forced to, but because protecting the relationship becomes personally meaningful. A man who is emotionally invested understands that every significant decision has the potential to strengthen or weaken trust. Instead of asking only, "What do I want?" he begins asking, "How will this affect us?" That simple change in perspective transforms the relationship from two separate lives running alongside each other into two people intentionally building something together. This doesn't mean he loses his independence or abandons his personal goals. Healthy relationships are never about giving up individuality. A confident and emotionally mature man continues pursuing his ambitions while also recognizing that a committed relationship requires cooperation. He communicates before making decisions that could impact both of you because he respects your role in his life. He values your perspective, even if the final decision isn't always exactly what you suggested. Feeling heard often matters just as much as getting your way, because it demonstrates that your voice carries genuine weight. Many unhealthy relationships are filled with one-sided decision-making. One partner changes jobs without discussion, makes financial commitments without consultation, disappears into new priorities, or repeatedly chooses personal convenience over the relationship. These behaviors slowly create emotional distance because they communicate that the partnership is secondary. Over time, the other person begins feeling like an observer instead of a valued teammate. Love cannot thrive when one person constantly feels informed after decisions have already been made rather than included before they happen. When a man is meant for you, you won't constantly wonder whether he sees a future together because his choices will quietly answer that question. He won't expect you to fit into whatever life he happens to create on his own. Instead, he intentionally builds a future that creates room for both of you. He understands that lasting relationships are not sustained by romantic words alone, but by daily decisions that communicate respect, partnership, and shared purpose. His actions consistently show that you are not simply part of his present happiness, but part of the future he is actively planning. One of the most painful mistakes people make in relationships is believing that if they explain themselves well enough, love deeply enough, or stay patient long enough, they can convince someone to finally recognize their worth. They assume that if they become more understanding, more forgiving, or more available, the other person will eventually appreciate everything they bring to the relationship. But healthy relationships do not work that way. Genuine respect is not something that has to be negotiated. When a man truly values you, it becomes evident through the way he consistently treats you, not through promises about how he might treat you someday. Many people spend months or even years trying to prove that they deserve better treatment. They overextend themselves, constantly give second chances, and ignore their own emotional needs because they hope their loyalty will eventually inspire change. Unfortunately, this often creates the opposite effect. When someone repeatedly accepts disrespect, mixed signals, or emotional neglect, they unintentionally teach the other person that these behaviors will be tolerated. Human behavior is shaped by patterns. If poor treatment never has consequences, there is very little motivation for meaningful change. This is why self-respect is one of the strongest foundations of any healthy relationship. A man who is genuinely meant for you doesn't require endless reminders to appreciate your presence. He doesn't make you compete for basic kindness or leave you questioning whether you matter after every disagreement. Instead, his respect is reflected in everyday actions. He listens when you speak. He acknowledges your feelings even when he doesn't fully agree with them. He keeps his promises because he understands that trust is built through reliability, not excuses. He doesn't make affection feel like a reward you have to earn after meeting impossible expectations. He values you because he recognizes your character, your integrity, and the role you play in his life. Psychologically, people tend to protect what they genuinely value. They invest time, energy, and emotional effort into relationships that matter to them. When someone repeatedly acts indifferent, dismissive, or emotionally unavailable while expecting you to keep proving your worth, the issue is rarely that you haven't done enough. More often, it reflects their own priorities, emotional maturity, or readiness for commitment. Trying harder cannot create appreciation in someone who has already decided not to recognize it. No amount of sacrifice can force another person to see what they are unwilling to see. This is why confidence changes relationship dynamics so dramatically. A person with healthy self-worth understands that their value does not increase simply because someone finally acknowledges it. They stop chasing validation and begin paying attention to actions instead of empty words. Rather than asking, how can I make him appreciate me? They begin asking, does his behavior show that he already does? That shift in thinking is powerful because it places responsibility where it belongs. Instead of constantly trying to become more acceptable to someone else, you start evaluating whether the relationship itself meets your standards for respect, honesty, and emotional security. A man who is meant for you won't leave you feeling as though love is a competition you must keep winning. He won't expect you to exhaust yourself, proving that you deserve consistency, loyalty, or kindness. He understands that mutual respect is the starting point of a healthy relationship, not the reward at the end of an emotional struggle. His appreciation is demonstrated through the way he speaks to you, the way he supports you during difficult moments, the way he honors your boundaries, and the way he consistently shows that your presence is something he values rather than something he takes for granted. Many people believe that the healthiest relationships are the ones with the fewest arguments. In reality, every meaningful relationship experiences conflict. Two people with different personalities, life experiences, communication styles, and expectations are bound to disagree from time to time. The presence of conflict is not what determines the strength of a relationship. What truly matters is how both people respond when disagreements arise. A man who is genuinely meant for you does not see conflict as a reason to withdraw, manipulate, or question the entire relationship. Instead, he sees it as an opportunity to understand you better and strengthen the connection through honest communication. One of the clearest signs of emotional maturity is the ability to separate the problem from the person. Emotionally immature individuals often treat every disagreement as a personal attack. They become defensive, shift blame, avoid responsibility, or shut down completely. Instead of solving the issue, they focus on protecting their ego. This creates an unhealthy cycle where neither person feels heard and unresolved frustrations slowly build over time. A man who is meant for you approaches conflict differently. He understands that being right is far less important than preserving trust and mutual respect. His goal is not to win the argument, but to protect the relationship from unnecessary damage. Psychologically, relationships become stronger when both partners learn how to repair emotional disconnection after conflict. Researchers have consistently found that successful couples are not those who avoid disagreements altogether, but those who recover from them in healthy ways. They apologize when they are wrong, take responsibility for their actions, and make genuine efforts to understand each other's perspective. This creates emotional safety because both people know that difficult conversations will not automatically lead to rejection or abandonment. Instead of fearing conflict, they trust that it can be resolved with patience and maturity. A man who is genuinely invested in the relationship listens even when the conversation is uncomfortable. He doesn't interrupt simply to defend himself or dismiss your feelings because they are different from his own. He understands that listening is not the same as agreeing. Sometimes your partner simply wants to feel understood before discussing solutions. Emotional intelligence allows him to recognize this difference. Rather than reacting impulsively, he pauses, reflects, and responds with intention. This creates an environment where both people feel respected, even during moments of disagreement. Another important pattern is that he does not use conflict as a tool for control. He doesn't disappear for days to punish you, give silent treatment to create anxiety, or intentionally say hurtful things just to gain the upper hand. Manipulation may create temporary power, but it destroys long-term trust. A man who values the relationship understands that emotional safety should never be sacrificed to win an argument. Even when emotions are high, he remains aware of the impact his words and actions have on the person he cares about. He chooses honesty over mind games and accountability over excuses. Healthy conflict also creates deeper understanding because it reveals needs, fears, and expectations that might otherwise remain hidden. Every disagreement becomes an opportunity to learn more about each other instead of another reason to grow apart. A man who is meant for you doesn't expect a perfect relationship without challenges. He expects two imperfect people who are both willing to communicate, adjust, forgive, and grow together. Rather than allowing conflict to create emotional distance, he uses it to build stronger trust, deeper respect, and a partnership where both people feel secure enough to face problems together instead of facing each other.